Good afternoon, everyone. This is Vatsal Shah, your business coach and mentor and speaker. Today, I welcome you all at VSF Conference 2022. And then we have Halil today with us. He's a CTO of Lovecrafts. Halil, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi all, great to be here. I'm Halil. As you said, I'm looking after the engineering teams at Lovecrafts.
So, as it is a business track and Halil being a merchant will give a different insights to the developer community we have here or the SIs we have here, that how it has been seen by your buyers, means your merchants, and how they look at technology, how they utilize technology to go to the next level. So I'll be asking some questions to Halil, and then he will be, he has been generous enough to be here and answer those questions. So let's begin. Halil, can you share Lovecraft story and what made you inspired to connect artisans and commerce?
Yeah. So if there's probably people who don't know Lovecraft. So Lovecrafts is home to our passionate community of crafters all around the world, where they can find inspiration for their new project, buy any supplies they need for them, and then share the progress or even the end result with fellow crafters. So the Lovecrafts origin story is that our founders found with their families and friends that they struggle finding inspiration and supplies in one place for their craft projects. So they decided to solve that. So we initially specialized, we launched specialized stores for knitters called Love Knitting, later joined by Love Crochet for crocheters. But then in 2019, we joined those stores into one roof called Lovecrafts to serve crafters who are active in more than one craft, but also allow seamless launches of new craft categories. We have warehouses in the US and UK. We ship over to over 190 countries. We count over 200 smart and kind makers in our team, of which about 80 are based in Ukraine. As you know, they are currently fighting for their lives and nation after Russia launched an unprovoked military invasion. So our thoughts are with them, and we try to do all in our hands to support them, including offering relocations and of themselves and or their families. Anything specific you would like to hear about Lovecrafts?
I can see your support to Ukraine. You are wearing blue and yellow today. That's great. So I love the story you had that you wanted to connect the artisans who have inspiring arts coming out, and then they are struggling selling it. And then there are people who make craft products and they want to sell. So you connected those community. So it's a community-driven e-commerce. Am I right?
Yes. And I think the content piece is probably what drives users most. So you could say that content is core to inspiration, which itself is driving users. So Lovecrafts was, for example, is known for having the largest catalog of patents. So patents is, you can imagine this like, you see this photo in our listing pages of, okay, this hat, for example, this is not a knitted hat, but imagine this would be a knitted or crochet hat. How do I make this? How do I knit this or crochet this? You would see the end result and you would say, okay, this is a model, or this is something I would like to make. And then once you get this, you find the instructions on how to do this. And it looks slightly like code as well. So when I first actually looked into these patterns, I could see there's like abbreviations, etc. Because knitters, since they've seen this so often, they've then started to make it shorter, etc. So people would actually identify from it would have like D3 and 5, etc. So it would look like code, and you would repeat what's said, what's written. So you can find those instructions on our site. They can be free, or there could be a small fee. They can be provided by renowned brands, or, which I like more, independent designers. They can upload their patterns on our designers marketplace.
That's great.
which we launched. But then, in order for crafters to actually make these projects, they need the relevant supplies, which can be yarns, threads, needles, and fabrics. We have that metadata of how much you need for that pattern. So, for example, if you're knitting an X large sweater, it would be this many balls in these colors, which can also easily substitute with a different color. But we also have users who already know which supplies they need, so they would come directly and say, like, I need this fabric, I need this thread or yarn.
That's
So that's a
amazing.
connection between content and commerce. And then once our users are working through these projects, they can share this progress with other crafters, and that inspires other crafters as well. So this circle of making can be both from a pattern or from a project others are making.
That's great. This part of world from where I am in India, just looking at the patterns and knitting at home has been hobby of our mothers and our grandmothers, and crochet has been very popular in this part of world. Let me tell you one more thing. In the India, there is one company who has been inspired from Lovecrafts and exactly started a similar model, but in a vernacular language. Their patterns are there, yarns and the threads can be picked up and it can be made. So thanks for inspiring a lot of people on earth. But in this, you said content and commerce, two things. So how do you bring a balance between two?
I think it's very clear that once you have, the more content you have, the more users you find. So I think the content is a key success factor. How can we source them? How can we incentivize designers to design more patterns and upload them? And then also, based on those, what supplies do you need to provide?
That's great.
And actually, this dynamic also creates this, that if there's suppliers or brands creating new yarns or fabrics, etc., they then need to also provide patterns for them. So without patterns, they don't sell.
Correct. That's great. So as a CTO, what are the parameters you keep in mind that to term your store successful?
So obviously, as an e-commerce business, there are metrics. I hope everyone in the e-commerce sector is looking at, like conversion rate, the checkout funnels, and engagement times and drop-off times, etc. I think these are things I'm looking at as well, but the business is helping me in doing that. So I would look more on the delivery side of things. So essentially, building a really good engineering organization, product development organization, a well-oiled one, so that the teams are enabled to deliver things our customers want in an efficient manner. And that starts also from actually knowing what our users want. So we have our product designers and product managers engaging in users research and users testing, etc., up to finally releasing what we're doing and then observing that they're essentially working as expected.
That's great. So as a lot of people sitting here love Magento like me, but I know that you have shifted from Magento open source to Commerce Tools and View Storefront. What made you choose Commerce Tools and View Storefront?
So Magento is great. So I think there's anyone who's saying Magento is not good doesn't have the perspective or the context what it's good for, right? Like I used to be a Magento developer as well. I've worked on major Magento projects, etc. And I think there's still a place for Magento. I think for Lovecrafts, what we can say is that we've scaled it so much from a performance perspective, but also from an internationalization perspective. So we run a single instance to serve more than 190 countries. So we have different pricing strategies, we have multi-warehousing, etc. So all these capabilities, in order to get them, we've spent many, many years. And having looked at, staying on Magento 1 is not an option, right? So I don't think anyone here suggests talking about that. So the only alternative would have been to look at Magento 2. And I've heard good things about Magento 2. I think the developer experience is definitely better. But we believe that the data model decisions are still the same to a degree. I mean, there's more internationalization support, but the actual like database model was like websites and how prices are managed with base price, etc. We felt like we would be investing again many years in to get the same level of customization. And also we had heard that the performance might not be very good initially. So you would need to spend time to get that right. So we felt like, okay, 10 years ago, Magento was a good choice. But now we know more about our requirements. So why don't we look at something which fulfills these readily from the start, and we can focus on what matters for the customer. So that's why we, I mean, also our content and community piece was already headless from the start. So from 2014 on, Lovecrafts has headless elements in its stack. And I personally have been working with headless since 2011 with Rocket Internet, with their solution called Alice and Bob. It was not known by headless back then, but we've seen that in the past. So we were like, we've seen lots of user stories coming up during this period where we found they actually overlap content commerce communities. So we don't really have a harshly segmented experience between them. And we found solutions for this, but they were all complex and suboptimal, slow, like edge side includes to get some block from community into our commerce pages, or on the community page showing our products and so on. So this was complicated. So it was kind of like a no-brainer to say, okay, the commerce needs to be headless as well. And we have our unified user experience, which has anything that user needs without really being limited by whatever backend systems are involved. And so we essentially looked for API first commerce solutions.
That's great. And reason for choosing Vue Storefront?
Yes, so I mean, we had our front end for content and community, but we were wondering if we're missing something out by not looking at the latest front end technologies. I think the initial JavaScript frameworks out there were not very optimized for things like search engines, etc. But there were a new set of solutions like Nuxt and Next, which are probably useful to have if we're doing such a new transformation. We felt like we could start with something fresher, but we also didn't really want to build everything ourselves. You know, again, we want to be working on actual features our users need specifically for crafters, rather than just rebuilding standard e-commerce functionalities. So we wondered if there's a way to accelerate this front end, this user experience. And we looked at what's out there, and frankly, there's not much out. So we found Vue Storefront, the most popular,
yep,
probably powerful as well, but the most popular Progress web apps solution. But the Vue Storefront one was essentially for commerce dinosaurs. Like, it wasn't really designed for commerce solutions where the APIs were actually there and powerful and fast. So it had like an Elasticsearch middleware, etc. Things which make sense, but do not make sense for a merchant like us, where we already have APIs available with commerce tools or with our community and content APIs. So we asked them a question: how can we use Vue Storefront without using these middlewares? And then essentially Philip, Patrick, etc., they said, look, we have this concept, we call it Vue Storefront Next. Now it's called Vue Storefront 2, where we exactly do this. You have composable architecture, you have composables where you can connect you can connect everything to different backend systems. So your products might come from commerce tools, your X can come from something else, etc. We said, okay, great. Where are you with it? And they said essentially we're still working on it. There's not much code yet available. We just felt this was a great thing to have. Like as a CTO, I'm also human. I'm not just looking at what the business needs, but also what the sector would need. So this is a really good idea. And we
Great.
wanted to reap from the success later, because we believed that, okay, initially there may not be much code, but later when the community kicks in, there'll be so many new integrations, there'll be so many new contributions that this is going to be stable, performant, and very capable. And you can see that now that, for example, if we were to change our CMS system or
Yeah.
whatever, there's probably already an integration out there with commerce, with Vue Storefront.
Yeah. Now ESF has been, a front leader in terms of being platform agnostic, and then yeah, they are doing great. Thanks for being, one of the first movers to pick up the Vue Storefront with Commerce Tools. That's great. It is also interesting to understand that being a large scale merchant, what kind of team structure do you need so that you continue functioning at a larger scale?
I guess what merchants are foremost dealing with is, should we have an in-house team, or should we outsource this? Should we work with a solutions integrator or solutions partner? And generally, what I feel with headless is that it's good to have an in-house team to do your day-to-day maintenance, looking after your users, etc. But you would still need to have access to for solution. Better if you use like you stuff on yourself and you do certain integrations. Um, it would be good to have some knowledge in-house, because there's so many moving parts with different APIs, different integrations, etc., that there can still be many things going wrong. But at the same time, if you're just hiring some engineers and tell them, okay, here are all the tools we're using, all the software and all the SaaS solutions and all the integrations we have, they would probably be very superficial in the beginning. So they would have a learning curve to learn actually the commerce tools APIs, etc., or the APIs of your CMS system. And it's not just the APIs, right? There's also so many nuances and quirks and edge cases with these solutions that they are usually only learned by doing. So by using a partner, you can actually get there quicker. So you would get people who've already done this. I think it's probably very easy to find a Nuxt or Vue developer, but I doubt that there will be, at this moment at least, many Vue Storefront developers.
Got it. Final two questions. What is your forecasting about headless trend coming in?
Well, I think in the beginning there would still be all the vendors moving into headless. I think that's the main trend, I could say, because I see it happening. And this will bring lots of opportunities as well. And I think the good thing with Vue Storefront is, since it's backend agnostic, any more solutions going API first means you can integrate them. And I think once you have these moving in, once headless is more adopted, you can then also see more best of breed software coming in to the mix, because they don't then have to have, they don't need to be within Magento also. They can, since it's all API based, they can bring their APIs in, and with the composable architecture, you can switch stuff over to using that specific software. So I would say there's a lot of new software coming in, new SaaS solutions or on-premise solutions coming in you can use with Vue Storefront. But then I would say probably it's also going to become more mature and more robust, right? So it's all battle tested. So that means maybe it's almost like a seamless integration or plug and play integration, where you can say, okay, I've plugged this in and it works for my use cases, because there's so many other companies or users of the software all the issues, or they have expanded this integration to all the capabilities of that software. For example, as Lovecrafts, we don't use certain APIs of commerce tools, but there might be other commerce tools users who use that. So maybe the first integration we did, or we storefront did, may be missing some of these things, right? Like, so with more users, all that's going to be ironed out. And I think once all that base is done, the foundation is done, we can then look at, okay, what does this freedom give us? And I think that's where it's actually going to be interesting.
That's great. And I have last question. Any final words or remark for VSF community we have today?
I think keep doing the great work. Like, I see lots of energy, which I think I haven't seen elsewhere in open source communities, like the recent hackathons, for example. And that's what, again, a hat tip to Vue Storefront, because they've also adopted that to Ukraine. And since the core team of Vue Storefront, at least the main core team, is in Poland, they are also actively helping with deeds as well to refugees. I would also say, well, I'm happy to see more integrations to get them more robust and mature. And yeah, keep growing, keep having fun.
Thank you, Halil, for sharing your views. I think people will learn a lot, and I think it is an inspiring story for a lot of merchants to kickstart their work where they want to connect commerce and content. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.